The stars are dazzling, and among the 400 billion star systems, 6 million civilizations wave their war hammers and rush into deep space. Time is too coincidental, making people suspect that the Milky Way is just a chessboard casually arranged by demons in the void. So, no matter how far or large an ideal is, it will appear insignificant. And perhaps I just want to satisfy my terrible addiction a little. Keywords of the novel. Offering blessings to beautiful stars without pop-ups, offering blessings to beautiful stars. Download the complete set of TXT and offer blessings to beautiful stars. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Falling in love with products. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Falling in love with products. If you have feelings for a product, it must not be allowed, right? No, it's not right. Fetishism may not be a very rare thing. For example, dolls, from ancient pottery figurines that were used to bury majestic emperors to holographic models that are now playful, are they essentially the same thing? There are also countless people who like alcohol, clothing, shoes, expired chemical patches, and so on. Compared to them, it's understandable that I just fell in love with a certain product, right? Suo Wu stood still at the entrance of the shop for a long time. The time is 3,142 years, and the planet under my feet has changed its owner several times. I also don't know how many races of blood are flowing inside my body. The 8-digit number on the shop sign in front of us may have more stars than people know. In this era, encountering such a commodity is not a fate. Yes, the product hanging in the essential items section of the store is a product. Sharp ears and jewel-like eyes. Based on the tens of thousands of novels downloaded to her mind, she may be classified as the elf that humans yearned for thousands of years ago. She was Venus with a broken arm, even losing more than Venus. The area where her shoulders were connected was empty and she could no longer walk. But compared to the delicate sculpture, her unconscious eyebrows and eyes still maintain the heroic spirit of a warrior. Perhaps this trait is what attracts Left Wu. The machines used in war would not give him such a feeling. Boss, which planet's indigenous people have been captured? Suo Wu said to the display screen of the store, which was a prerequisite for bargaining. The display screen flickered a few times, simulating the most intimate image for Left Wu based on his past trajectory. A slightly chubby middle-aged woman was projected out. Hey, I don't understand these things. What planet or sector, with too many numbers? Who remembers? Big brother, can you buy it? I guarantee there's nothing better than it within 2 light years. The projection smacked its lips and then touched its own belly. Suo Wu touched his chin and said, "You misunderstood, not at all. Besides, I want her to live. She won't be able to take a breath of this air, will she? Don't worry, this race is very interesting. It is said that on the front line, some of their settlements persisted for several weeks in the radiation field before surrendering. Hey, radiation. Why is it so expensive after being exposed to radiation? Oh my, not all indigenous people are caught by radiation. Look at how smooth the skin is. How does it look like it's been exposed to radiation? Suo Wuya is a bit itchy, a machine that opens its eyes and talks nonsense. Bargaining is not enough, I just hope what the shop owner said is true. Elves do have the vitality to survive on this planet. The price was agreed upon, and the middle-aged woman smiled as she disappeared, with a mechanical extension resembling a glove. Suo Wu placed his hand on it, and a tingling sensation surged out of his nerves. This is payment. Energy is the universal currency in this universe. In theory, people like Suo Wu who still stubbornly possess over 90% of their flesh and blood bodies can only store a pitiful amount of bioelectricity between their cells. Unlike mechanical knots that can install batteries, nor are they purely energy bodies like psychic creatures. But Suo Wu is different. The surging energy surged out of his body, which was a kind of gift that Zhuo received from his terrifying presence in deep space, and also one of the roots of his nest in this remote colonial galaxy. Fortunately, the store in front of us does not really know how to think, and the videos it stores will not be accessed by anyone for 10 years. Then, in a wave of steam, the tentacles attached to her spine loosened, and the elf was put on a mask and roughly pushed out of the store. Embrace her in your arms. So light, she is so light, is it because she can no longer walk and has lost the thing connected to her shoulders? Zhuo knocked on the store panel again and said, "She's not complete yet." The panel flickered a few times before the woman appeared again, blinking awkwardly and saying, "Oh, you're so greedy. But I'm sorry, I have to keep the information of other customers confidential. This way." His hand placed on the screen suddenly shook, and the electricity it carried surged out in an instant. Zhuo held the elf's head in his other hand and listened to her painful breathing. Under these stars, my face was illuminated by the flickering electric light, shining bright and dark. The machinery of the local food store certainly does not have any high-end firewalls, and the holographic image is instantly glaring, but immediately twisted and transformed in waves like interference. From crude butchers to slender extraterrestrial creatures. Finally, the electric spark stopped flashing, and the machinery in front of me also felt a burning sensation. The store brought a bit of flattery, as its internal display showed a staggering number of deposits due to mechanical malfunctions. "Oh my, customer, you're so polite. There are 2 people who bought the rest, so I'll tell you. Recently, natural food prices have skyrocketed. Be cautious when walking near the store." Zhuo held the elf in his arms, feeling a bit worried. The rest of her buyers are difficult to find, and what should we do after finding them? Maybe we should discuss it with our roommates. The Earth beneath my feet, according to the classification criteria of the Star-Sea Alliance, should be considered a dead planet. Thousands of years ago, the indigenous civilization accidentally eliminated itself and the vast majority of unlucky species while playing with atomic energy. Next, it brings horizontal radiation and a dramatically changing atmosphere. But the burst of atomic energy is far from enough to change the orbit of a planet. It still runs smoothly on the habitable zone of the galaxy and receives suitable stellar light. The surviving tiny life grows vigorously, and the remnants of radiation finally dissipate in thousands of years of time. The ecosystem is once again fragile, but it is welcoming an unwelcome guest from outer space like itself. To be honest, the environment here is still harsh. So the number of immigrants coming here is not enough from beginning to end. Although a series of government facilities have been built, the bureaucratic system lacking regulation can easily fall into corruption, and law enforcement officers are scarce. There are also deep-rooted prejudices among workers from different galaxies and races. Even the management-type AI on colonial ships cannot operate at full capacity. The more precise the AI, the more precious it is. Although the radiation from the death planet dissipates, as long as there is a small residue, it can easily penetrate the carrier chip of the AI, and it must allocate most of its energy to protect itself. So, even the most basic household registration and housing allocation on this planet now rely on manual registration by government officials. And these cannot be relied upon. After all, with some skills, who would come to this harsh border planet? It gave Zhuo some space to fish in troubled waters. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Roommates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Roommates. Zhuo arrived on this planet as a law enforcement officer at the beginning. The so-called law enforcement officers have no identity verification, no background checks, and do not need any outstanding resumes. As long as you can prove that you have the ability to deter unruly laborers from various planets. Simply put, they are thugs and thugs personally hired by the colonial star government. Zhuo is not interested in being a thug, but he is interested in the apartments that can be assigned to him after becoming a law enforcement officer. In the current situation where there are more land and fewer people, each person is allocated prefabricated large bungalows. It's just that the law enforcement officers have one room for 2 people, and the upward bureaucrats have one room for 1 person. And all the laborers could only squeeze in and share a room with 15 roommates. The artificially divided classes are the magic weapon for maintaining the stability of the colonial star. Pushing the door open and entering, his roommate had indeed left early and was now dozing off on the sofa with his head tilted. According to the classification of the Star-Sea Alliance, roommate is a standard human female, only a mixed race of some sea monster races. Her smooth cheeks and forehead were covered with several white scales, and a few tentacles extended from the back of her neck, like pillows surrounding her neck. She seemed to hear a commotion, and her slender legs, which were wrapped in a power exoskeleton and resting on the coffee table, moved for a moment. In his drowsy eyes, he rubbed his eyes and played with his short, pearly white hair. He opened his eyes, smiled, and saluted Left Wu, saying, "Hello, former law enforcement officer 44132. What did you bring back?" "My name is Zhuo Wu, not former law enforcement officer 44132. Zhuo Wu grinned and placed the purchased elf on the sofa. "A 2-character name, there are too many people calling it. We have 3 neighbors named Gulu, 4 named Zoe, and a few colleagues named Paji. Compared to them, Zhuo Wu is neither easy to pronounce nor easy to remember, so it's more comfortable to call your former law enforcement officer 44132. She chuckled foolishly and pointed at the elf. "So what did you bring back?" "No, Acehan Mountain, we can't discuss it." "This is my insistence," Zhuo Wu put on a tone of lengthy discourse. "Or do you want to hear more about the thousands of years of history hidden in this surname and name, as well as the difference between it and those foolish onomatopoeic names?" "No, no," the roommate raised his hands and surrendered. "So what exactly is the thing you brought back?" "Hey, what did you just call me?" "Call you AI Shan Shan, isn't your number law enforcement officer 33233? AI Shan Shan is a name extracted from inside. Humph, Acehan Mountain. It's okay. Forget it, whatever you want," she snorted in her nasal voice, neither affirming nor denying. "So why have you been shifting the topic from just now on? Hey, what exactly are you bringing back?" AI Shanshan's curiosity seemed to have been completely aroused, and his legs, wearing power armor, swayed, making the coffee table, which was already about to fall apart, even more precarious. Zhuo Wu couldn't bear the light emanating from AI Shanshan's round eyes, let alone the shyness that emerged within him. Just like introducing a newlywed wife to a friend, I always instinctively want to procrastinate. However, I still need the help of AI Shanshan, and confessing as soon as possible is the right path. Zhuo Wu scratched his cheek and said, She was the one I bought in the store, the one I bought. Oh, she's so pitiful. Just don't let me see her while enjoying it, I can't stand it a bit." AI Shanshan stood up and patted Zhuo Wu's shoulder, saying, "Don't be too psychologically pressured. This is the natural right of each of us. If you blame us, it's our Imperial Alliance that lost the battle. The main livestock planets have all been lost, right? No, I don't want this, no, I want it, but in a different form," Zhuo Wu gestured a few times. "It's that kind, that kind." Ha! Ha! AI Shanshan suddenly took a step back without leaving a trace. The hand that had just patted Left Wu's shoulder wiped back and forth on the hem of his clothes. "Yes, that's right. Some people like to eat bread, while others like to use bread. It's just a habit of the crustaceans." "Ah, nothing, that's okay. I still have to go to work, so I'll leave you with the apartment for now." "No, but it's very close, but it's still not," Zhuo Wu frowned and pondered for a while before shaking his head. "I don't want to use strong ones. I'm willing to do what she wants. Yes, you can download some ancient early novels and read them. The feeling of having only one male and one female protagonist is probably that." AI Shanshan was stunned for a moment, his gaze on Zhuo Wu was subtle, like a roommate who had always been abnormal and finally went crazy. But deep down, there is a long-standing fanaticism hidden. I seem to understand, she pondered for a moment as she pinched her chin. So what do you want to do to fulfill your so-called love and her wishes? Don't follow the methods in novels, I don't think there's a reliable one. It's simple, don't you think she's running out of hands and feet now? Suowu glanced at the elf and pulled a thin blanket cover for her. He turned around and said, I'll go help her find it, and then connect it to her. Isn't that a big step forward for me from she loves me? Even if things don't go well, at least it can dispel a bit of her vigilance. Humph. AI Shanshan didn't answer, just lifted the blanket that Suowu had just covered for the elf. Touch her skin with your hand and press with your fingertips to feel. Is that really the case? Despite her slender appearance, her muscles are well developed. She might be a warrior from an indigenous planet or something like that. Most warriors are knowledgeable, so I don't think your little moves will be effective. I have to give it a try. Suowu saw a painful expression in the elf's eyebrows and eyes, feeling inexplicably tugged at him. Okay, just give it a try. So, you came to me specifically to discuss what you want me to do. I found out that there are two buyers, one is Struzworm Man and the other is a psionic from the Electric Alliance. They only have videos and no names. It's a bit difficult for me, who is no longer a law enforcement officer, to find them. Who told you to resign inexplicably? You want me to help you find someone, right? Humph, you know the conditions. AI Shanshan reached out and his eyes curved into crescent moon. Pocket money, give me pocket money quickly. Suowu licked his tongue and reached out to grab her soft catkin. The lightning flickered, and AI Shanshan trembled, emitting a sigh of extreme satisfaction. This should be enough, right? Enough, come on, show me the video. She withdrew her hand and the laziness in her voice turned into a spirited and virtuous one. Suowu nodded and scratched a few times in the air. In this era, almost everyone's personal computer is integrated into their visual organs. There are also models that are directly planted in the mind, but they have not been very popular for groups like Suowu and AI Shanshan who maintain their flesh and blood. The computer integrated into the human retina is called the field of view. AI Shanshan's vision received the video and frowned for a while, saying, bug people are easy to handle. They report to the queens of their respective communities every day. Spiritual beings are a bit difficult and don't have a fixed shape. Why do you think spiritual creatures buy elves? They can't use it. Who knows, you think insect people are easy to find. Then hurry up and leave. Suowu pulled AI Shanshan and walked out. If it's late, it's troublesome. Let's go. Wait, lock the door, don't forget to lock it. The two of them left the apartment in a noisy manner. In the room, only the pain and gasping of the elves on the sofa remained. A few minutes after they left the apartment, the elf suddenly opened its eyes and immediately let out a painful cry. She gritted her teeth, swallowed the pain, swayed her body, and fell awkwardly from the sofa. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Insect Man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Insect Man. Suowu always feels that this universe is quite abnormal. There are approximately 400 billion star systems in the Milky Way, and almost every star system has life born, with 1 in 2 eventually evolving into a civilization. In other words, there may be around 2 billion civilizations in the entire Milky Way galaxy. 1002 years ago, not much. The entire Milky Way is still quiet. The previous group of civilizations that flew towards the starry sea almost perished for unknown reasons, while the surviving civilizations transformed into fallen nations with unparalleled technology, yet they refused to take even a step out of their own galaxy. Then, it was 2140 years in the solar calendar, as if a mysterious existence had sounded its horn. In the Milky Way, approximately 6 million civilizations have almost simultaneously discovered hyperspace lanes and mastered hyperspace navigation technology, instantly breaking the long-standing silence of the Milky Way. The so-called hyperspace route is a bidirectional channel between two stellar systems. Due to its existence, the originally several light-years-long chasm between stellar systems has been transformed into a pathway that can calculate time on a monthly basis. 6 million civilizations simultaneously surged into the unknown deep space and collided with each other at an astonishing speed. The time span between different civilizations, from the joyful encounter with extraterrestrial civilizations for the first time to the unbearable boredom of suddenly appearing unfamiliar languages, does not even exceed 100 years. Surprisingly, these civilizations that simultaneously mastered hyperspace navigation technology, although developed at different times and mastered different technological trees. But in terms of quantitative intensity, at least at the moment of takeoff, the intensity of all aspects of civilization is roughly equivalent. In future communication in the Starry Sea, although various conflicts have caused civilizations to frequently greet each other's intelligence in their respective languages, it must be admitted that from a macro perspective, there is no difference of magnitude in intelligence between big guys. The starting line is the same, and the intelligence possessed is generally similar. So, for at least these 6 million civilizations flying simultaneously, there are no dark forests in the Milky Way, but rather more like the magnificent Warring States period of pre-Qin. Even pioneers have made some bold attempts and found that reproductive segregation between races is incredibly fragile. So now there are so many strange mixed races. Zhuo always felt that the entire galaxy today was like a game board deliberately created by some indescribable existence. He doesn't know whether this Milky Way is good or bad, let alone whether the universe outside the Milky Way is the same scene. Perhaps the fallen nations that survived the previous generation have some clues, but they have remained silent. However, this slightly terrifying speculation is meaningless for the current Left Wu. His mind was dyed pink, and he just wanted to quickly go find the strollworm to retrieve the elf's limbs. Following Mount AI, we boarded the floating car and rushed towards the urban settlement area at lightning speed. Acehan Mountain is still wearing the power armor of law enforcement officers, which has caused them a lot of glare. The newly built cities on this planet are still incomplete, with most of them being modified from parts removed from colonial ships. Although not aesthetically pleasing, it ensures basic regularity. For example, it is easy to find settlements of various races. Jumping off the floating car, the power armor at the foot of Mount AI stirred up a black layer of dust. She cleared her throat and looked around. The struggling people have a good reputation, they work actively and obey management. What you're looking for is that they're lucky. Zhuo Wu nodded and jumped down, but his footsteps were very agile. Are they afraid of law enforcement? Almost, should you also regret resigning? I only regret it the moment the government kicked me out of the law enforcement department. Then you have to wait. It will take at least 2 or 3 years for the government's management-oriented AI to react here. AI Shanshan turned his head and his power armor hit the ground. Hey, do you like our apartment so much because you have a roommate like me? Zhuo Wu stopped and frowned for a moment, thinking seriously. I originally intended to directly deny it, but upon closer examination, perhaps there is a reason for this. Stay away from me, the food you like is still waiting for you. AI Shanshan gave a disdainful smack to her mouth, hugging her arms with both hands. Her scales stood up for a few minutes, making her goosebumps. The topic suddenly came to an end, and a subtle awkwardness quietly descended. Fortunately, this place is not far from the territory of the Strolls, so they can go ahead and do the right thing first. Crustaceans like to live underground, so the apartments prepared by the government for them are cramped ant nests hidden deep underground. Although the entrance is large, it always emits an unpleasant smell. And the appearance of bug people is notorious for being uncomfortable in the eyes of other races. So, besides law enforcement officers, there are indeed very few people of other races visiting this place. As he was approaching the main entrance, Ai Shanshan suddenly patted Zhuo Wu's shoulder and said, "Here, over there, a fresh stroll." Zhuo Wu nodded and quickly compared his mind with the video he had obtained from the store. Unfortunately, the bug man looked more abstract each time, and he really didn't know if this was the one who bought a part of the elf. "Do you have any suggestions?" asked Zhuo Wu. From the numbering of the two, it can be seen that Ai Shanshan is his true senior. Suggestions. Ai Shanshan touched his chin and said, "Although each of the struggling people has autonomous consciousness, they exchange neurotransmitters in their brains with the queens of their respective tribes every day. This way, their individual memories will synchronize with the entire tribe. So, if you are willing to pay a little price, just go and ask their queens directly." Good specific suggestions. Zhuo Wu changed his mind slightly towards Ai Shanshan, a law enforcement officer who likes to be late and leave early. He nodded and said, "I can only go straight to the queen in a fair and upright manner. If I knew which insect bought the hands and feet, it wouldn't be so troublesome. Let's go then." Ai Shanshan cleared his throat, lifted his hands behind his back, and put on a posture of tolerance in handling cases, even raising his tall legs slightly. Then, the stroll people who were constantly looking over there threw down their belongings and immediately turned their heads, leading them one step further into the depths of their homeland. It actually saves the trouble of introducing oneself to the group led by Zhuo Wu. The home of insect humans always challenges human physiological tolerance. The deeper one goes, the clearer the feeling of walking in the belly of a certain organism. Various sticky hoses and fungi stick to the mechanical walls like this, emitting a faint light, like this colonial ship that has been parasitized by primitive flesh and blood. It's actually a good kind of lighting. In this environment, the struggling people were able to perform skillfully, climbing between the walls and silently staring at the two unwelcome guests, Zhuo Wu and Acehan Mountain, with their eyes full of expression. The extra eyes bring a double sense of pressure, and the sound of insect-like claws rubbing against each other is an alternative whispering, also quite penetrating. In this situation, Acehan Mountain still looks indifferent. Walking in this cramped nest is like returning to her own home, with tigers stirring the wind beneath her feet. She did not take the wrong path as expected, as evidenced by the swarming insects walking in line ahead. They each hold pure white eggs in their arms, intending to send them to the nursery in the nest. Zhuo Wu squinted his eyes, at least he knew that only the queen was qualified to lay eggs in a settlement of insect people. After turning a few more turns, Zhuo Wu and Ai Shanshan stopped. The space ahead suddenly opened up, and a bug man seemed to have been waiting for a long time. Rubbing his wings that had not yet degenerated, he simulated human language. "Law enforcement officers, we, the queen, have been waiting for a long time." After speaking, he made way. Left Wu Xiangqian, this time he has become the leader. Since he is likely to be Miss Ai Shanshan's attendant in the eyes of the bug man, there is no need to follow the complicated formalities of the bug man's audience. Entering the palace, Zhuo Wu's pupils contracted. Inside is a forest of wine and meat, with countless animals hanging like bead curtains on the walls and ceiling. At the fracture site of these animals, a viscous luminescent liquid mixed with blood and water, quietly hanging down like liquid stalactites. The walls and ceiling are wriggling, and there are meat tubes that feed newly hatched eggs into these swollen animals to complete the initial development of the eggs. Under the dripping mucus, the queen sat there, rubbing her cheeks and waiting. Unlike ordinary insect humans, her appearance seems to have been modified by the strolls themselves and has become quite close to humans, even with simulated hair. However, the skin is still made of chitin, and the face is also made up of several pieces of shells pieced together. It's not that she doesn't want to get up to greet, it's because she can't. At best, the image of a queen is just like a small lamp on the head of a healthy fish, and her essence is the palace itself. Underneath its buttocks are several kilometers-long childcare organs, in which countless eggs develop and produce. Those with good quality are laid, while those with poor quality are directly digested and used for subsequent energy. AI Shanshan coughed lightly and said, "Miss Queen, it's truly admirable to see you working hard to increase the population of the imperial colony. This is not the honorific title of Acehan Mountain, but the name on the ID card of the leader of the Stro settlement in front of me is called Queen. This is our tribe's instinct and not worth boasting about." The Queen's carapace tugged at her face as if she was laughing. "Compared to this, I wonder what kind of wind blew the law enforcement officers in." AI Shanshan glanced at Suo Wu, who nodded and said in a deep voice, "Your tribe bought extraterrestrial natives in the store earlier today, which may be related to the latest important case in the colony. We must recover them." "Ha! This way," the Queen looked puzzled and said, "but the materials I used to conceive my child were all purchased from the market through wholesale, so there shouldn't be any scattered purchases. This law enforcement officer, I wonder if there are any videos or similar for me to see." "Here." Suo Wu scratched a few more times and transmitted the video through his field of vision. The Queen nodded and carefully considered. In front of her, she didn't have any extra movements, but Suo Wu heard the speed of organ peristalsis in the entire palace increase slightly, just like a human's heart beating faster due to sudden anger. For a long time, the Queen shook her head and the voice simulated by the friction of her wings became somewhat stiff. "Unfortunately, this is not my child. Perhaps it is the missing population from my tribe who became a trespasser a long time ago. Ah, it is the one who gave birth to offspring without my permission. According to the treaty between Stro and the Imperial League, this is also a serious crime that cannot be easily tolerated on your side." AI Shanshan's eyes suddenly lit up, "A serious crime. Has the opportunity come for meritorious service? Get a raise, get a raise." Suo Wu za tongue, "The Queen doesn't need to lie. That's also right. Since having an affair with the Stro people is a serious crime for the Imperial Alliance, the Zerg people in the video cannot purchase the nutrients needed to conceive eggs for the newly born tribe in a centralized manner and can only purchase them in small quantities. This is a loophole. Even if the Queen doesn't have any clues, the whereabouts of the elf's hands and feet can still be found from the transaction records in various stores." Suo Wu pinched the knuckles of his finger and immediately wanted to turn around and say goodbye. But suddenly I noticed that the Queen in front of me was a bit stunned. After just being filled with righteous indignation, she fell into a long silence. He waved his hand in front of the Queen's eyes and said, "What's wrong with you?" "Ah, I'm sorry. Your Excellency," the law enforcement officer, the Queen came to her senses and wiped the corners of her mouth. "I've been watching the video you gave me and trying to find any more clues. That's it, it's..." "What is it?" "The indigenous people bought by the lowly race are really, really tempting." The Queen's chest undulated, and the glowing mucus slowly seeped out of her mouth. "My tribe has a history of over 200 years and is quite knowledgeable, but I have never seen anything that looks so great, even through a layer of surveillance footage. It's stuttering, so fragrant, so longing. Ah, sorry, you humans may not understand." "No, I understand too well." Suo Wu grinned and I was also very envious of her. Perhaps we are rare acquaintances in certain aspects, perhaps. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Support. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Support. Insect humans are a key target for prevention throughout the entire galaxy. Without him, it is because no matter what, they cannot truly integrate into other civilizations. Most insect people who can form a social identity possess a honeycomb consciousness, meaning that each insect person is difficult to say as an individual, but rather like the cells that make up their tribe. The entire tribe together is a complete life. The instinct of life and individual consciousness are naturally in conflict. Individuals need pleasure, rest, and a better life. But life itself does not need it, it only needs to reproduce endlessly. So, the pure life formed by the beehive consciousness of insect humans is a terrifying aggregation that only knows how to reproduce. Even if it already possesses intelligence to develop science, all it wants is to use science to reproduce faster, more, and further. The strolls are fine, their conscious communication and synchronization are achieved through the transmission of chemical neurotransmitters through contact with each other's antennae, with time intervals calculated in days. Moreover, if they are slightly further away, they need to split into new tribes in order to continue expanding. Although the efficiency is low, it at least leaves a small space for each individual to retain independent thinking. And, thanks to this low efficiency and intensity, the strolls at least know that in order to continue to reproduce, they must compromise with other civilizations in the galaxy. But there are still some insect humans in the Milky Way that are different. They rely on spiritual energy to communicate consciousness in the void, and even if individuals are separated by several light years, they can achieve perfect synchronization through some technological means. This kind of insect person is truly, 10,000 is one. Therefore, the honeycomb life constructed in this way only has one purest thing to care about, which is reproduction. No circuitous and efficient reproduction. Transform everything within the observation range into your own parenting nest. Eat all the lives that dare to resist. Such insect humans do not even have a language to communicate with other civilizations. Its endless expansion and devouring are indiscriminate disasters for civilizations that have just entered the Sea of Stars. The initial establishment of the Star-Sea Alliance was initiated by the victimized civilizations to fight against such insect humans. By now, although such extreme insect humans have been completely eradicated, the remaining ones are the group of people like Stro who have learned to compromise. But the nightmares that block the sky and sun will not be easily forgotten, so the unauthorized reproduction of insect people is still a serious crime in the serious crime. It also gave Zhuo Wu at least some leverage. For example, he invited AI Shanshan to have a cup of coffee, and then endured the pricking sensation of the scales on her back to rub her shoulders and beat her back, making her sit down and quickly give a small report to the colonial government. In colonial star ships, the liaison channel for law enforcement officers still has some priority. The management AI carried on it carefully unpacked it after being convinced that the signal was not a radiation attack from a hostile planet. Then, this brief report with typos was quickly elevated to high priority by AI. Let's put aside other things for now, fully enable computing performance, and turn on global monitoring, which was closed to save resources. It confirmed the accuracy of the information in just a few seconds, supplemented by big data calculations. Within a few minutes, the new insect nest hidden deep within this dead planet had nowhere to hide. On the other hand, AI Shanshan was still marveling at Zhuo Wu's boldness. In the current situation where Emperor Union has lost several agricultural planets, the price of a cup of natural coffee may be able to cover the living expenses of an ordinary person for 2 months. She sat side by side with Zhuo Wu on the roadside. Just as she happily put the straw into her mouth, she was frightened by the sudden alarm flashing in her vision and coughed repeatedly. Choked. The coffee was knocked over, and she desperately grabbed it with both hands. It was only with a timely slap on the back from Zhuo Wu that she finally recovered. Looking at the cup scattered on the ground again, he was very disappointed and said, "Oh, what a pity. It's okay, just buy it again. Why are you so rich? Sigh, we've been rubbing against you for the past few months, eating and dressing. It feels like you're taking care of us." AI Shanshan didn't know the source of energy inside Zhuo Wu's body, nor did he intend to delve deeper. He just chuckled and said, "Not to mention this, have you received the government's law enforcement assembly order? Everyone has their own little secrets, don't they?" She licked her lips with her slightly forked tongue. Zhuo Wu held hands and felt a bit worried. "I received it, but I have already resigned. Managing AI is like this, always inefficient in some strange places, probably intentionally." AI Shanshan stood up, patted his clothes, and the feeling of disappointment came and went quickly. "You should also go this time, anyway, you also need to find limbs." "Oh, you don't have the equipment of a law enforcement officer." "It's okay, just follow behind me. That's not necessary. Suo Wu grinned. The strolls were not the kind of race that could physically cross hyperspace lanes. He had his own secrets and didn't even care about them. The surrounding air was faintly oscillating, and the floating cars of other law enforcement officers had rushed towards their destination. Some had noticed them on the ground and seemed to be able to catch a ride. It can only be said that the so-called law enforcement officers are indeed just a group of thugs recruited by the government. Compared to them, AI Shanshan, who is accustomed to being late and leaving early, is actually the one with strict discipline. Almost no one arrived on time on the floating ships designated as assembly points. But Suo Wu originally thought that not wearing the power armor of a law enforcement officer would be a bit eye-catching. Unexpectedly, these former colleagues whom I had hardly met were all disheveled, and 10 people combined may not be able to gather 3 complete sets of equipment. Even Acehan Mountain is the same, because she doesn't like wearing shoulder armor. Law enforcement officers cannot all come from the same race. Under the blue sunlight, colorful skin collided with strangely shaped eyebrows and eyes. Some of these races are already feuds, with several shoving and a massive brawl about to unfold. A piercing noise suddenly rang out from the floating ship, tormenting everyone's auditory organs. The clamor was instantly suppressed, and a round-shaped big eye was projected out. First-time meeting. Scumbags, foodies, wanted criminals from all over the planet. With big eyes floating in the air, he looked proud and said, "I am 1,000th of the computing power of the AI managed by the Imperial Alliance colony myself. Most of you and I wouldn't have met before. But today's situation is special, so I have to come see your disgusting appearance." Ugh. Suo Wu blinked his eyes, but he didn't feel offended. But others don't think so. The conflict that was originally pressed once again erupted, but this time it targeted the stinky AI above. The AI emitted another burst of noise, and the disgust in its tone remained undiminished. "I know why you came to this place where birds don't poop and become law enforcement officers. It's just that you owe money, break the law, or believe in some strange religion in your hometown. Colonies are all bad, but one thing is true. Everything started from scratch before the Emperor's network was connected. Starting from scratch, you can whitewash your identity and start a new life. But no matter what, you still need money. It's a wonderful energy coin. With it, in the current environment, perhaps you can have a sweet afternoon tea with the officials responsible for household registration and identity before the supervision of the Imperial Alliance arrives." AI grinned and said, 3,000ths of an energy coin. Whoever kills the queen of the straw tyrant in the low insect nest will receive this reward. 3 out of 10,000. The thugs all breathed heavily together. And a steady-looking law enforcement officer with 4 eyes and a bull's head looked at his irrational colleagues, sighed silently, took a step forward, and raised his hand. "I want to ask, isn't dealing with illegal bug people solved by firing ground-penetrating bullets or penetrating light from a floating airship on the ground? Why do we have to go down in person? A ground-penetrating bullet is more than 3,000ths of an energy coin." The AI muttered softly and suddenly increased its volume. "For the future development of the colony, this time I hope to minimize the death of bug people except for the queen. Yes, after taking down the illegal queen, these robust laborers can integrate into the legal straw community. You don't understand, this is my wise high-level planning." The law enforcement officer of the Tauren grinned, still raising his hand. "What about the other seized supplies? I heard that the strolls have a habit of storing their belongings." "It's all yours, come on." As soon as the AI finished speaking impatiently, some law enforcement officers who were able to fly in the atmosphere cheered and waved various wings as they eagerly jumped off the deck of the floating ship. A more rational person is to talk to the AI with a shy face and see if they can get some new equipment. Suo Wu and AI Shanshan didn't need it. She pointed to the reverse engine on the power armor behind her waist and patted her arm. Then, she grabbed Zhuo in her arms and lightly jumped down from this kilometer-high sky. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Fear. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Fear. Even in mid-air, Zhuo could smell the burnt smell emanating from below due to the outbreak of the battle. Ai Shanshan wrinkled his nose, feeling very unhappy from the smell. I saw Zhuo's face numb in front of her again, as if he had no feelings for his embrace. The feeling of displeasure doubled, and she pursed her lips before suddenly giving a provocative smile to Zhuo. The power armor of law enforcement officers is not second-hand. After all, the storage space on colonial starships is much more valuable than a few sets of equipment. They are actually the first batch of materials produced after the establishment of industrial facilities. The design is never outdated, it is only limited to the maximum output power. It can even be sold at a considerable high price on the black market. So, it's the former colleague of Zhuo who couldn't come up with a complete set of equipment with just a few people. Since there is no problem with the performance, the conditions for Ai Shanshan to play pranks were given. She licked her lips and suddenly grabbed Zhuo in her arms. Then change your body posture in the air. The two of them were facing down together, and the thrusters hanging on her waist were fully turned on. The pushing force and gravity stacked together, they fall straight to the ground like meteors. But she is clearly not satisfied with this. In less than 2 seconds at extremely high speed, they approached the ground, and Aishan Mountain suddenly pulled back its height, making them float up again like fallen leaves. The rapid change in speed brings about the G.force approaching the limit of the human body. If they were still the human physique of 1,000 years ago, they probably wouldn't have known how many bones were broken. Finally, the pressure sensor in Aishan Mountain's field of vision began to turn red, issuing a sharp alarm, and she finally slowed down and landed honestly. At the moment when its toes touched the ground, the forward inertia is perfectly offset, and the landing point is even more precise. Hee, how are you? Am I good at it? Putting Zhuo down, Ai Shanshan proudly crossed his waist. In his imagination, Zhuo should now have a pale face and lingering palpitations, while admiring his skills with all his heart. Ai Shanshan was disappointed. Zhuo's expression remained unchanged, but there was a hint of satisfaction in his inner self. That's amazing. I think not many people in the machine control team or the spirit hall could do that just now. Can we do it again? It would be great if we could pull it up a little closer to the ground. The GU Regiment and the Lingning Hall are the two top troops in the Imperial Alliance's regular army, and their members naturally do not appear on this frontier planet. But Ai Shanshan, who was praised, looked unhappy and even pursed his lips and shook his head, saying, "There's no way. I'm not a free acrobat. What a pity." Zhuo sighed lightly, without any entanglement, and looked to the side with his eyes. The essence of a dead planet is revealed in the depths of a planet far away from colonial settlements. The scorching and desolate air rolled open the pitch-black sand and stones, and the orange aurora that appeared in the sky due to the disturbance of the magnetic field mercilessly illuminated the earth. This is not beauty for the fragile ecosystem that has struggled to recover from the nuclear disaster thousands of years ago, but rather the silent sickle of death hanging silently in the sky. The insect nest of the Strout people is hidden here. No, it's not hidden anymore. The first batch of law enforcement officers have already visited, and the giant rocks that sealed the entrance have shattered all over the ground. Several dismembered insect humans are alone receiving the aurora's illumination, their bodies have been cut open, and all the meat and organs that can be sold have been looted. There is even one person continuing his looting. That person looks like a fleshy starfish, which makes Aishan Mountain, who also has a mixed race of aquatic civilization in his body, feel even more friendly. She coughed lightly and immediately caught the attention of the starfish. "What are you doing?" "These are mine." Starfish quickly grabbed the body of the bug man into his arms. "Please take advantage of the fire and go somewhere else. Eat, drink, and don't get in my eye." AI Shanshan smiled and couldn't help but want to pinch the flesh of the starfish's face. Why are you picking up garbage here instead of going to find the illegal queen? Go, don't touch me, sea demon, Haixing dodged with disdain. Not everyone is looking at that energy coin and going to fight and kill those stinky bugs. Everyone is just making a living, so that's about it. The starfish looked so real, but AI Shanshan frowned and said, fight and kill. The strolls probably don't have much power to fight and kill us, do they? Who knows where these gatekeepers found the blue laser antique, but they knocked us down with just one glance, Haixing pouted. I think that stinky AI is hiding something from us. It's better to pick up the garbage, at least not to lose our lives. Zhuo Wu and AI Shanshan exchanged a glance, blue laser. Are these illegal bug people smuggling weapons from other planets? Although it's not something remarkable, it still requires a reassessment of the power possessed by the bug man. AI Shanshan, to reiterate, my goal is to find the limbs of the elves. These limbs are mostly used to breed insect eggs, which is hung on the roof of the illegal queen's residence. Their guards have all used blue lasers, and I dare not even think about what the queen's personal guards will use, Zhuo Wu whispered in AI Shanshan's ear, after all, this is not your business, so it's okay if you don't go in. What's the point? I have to go meet that queen just for you, AI Shanshan twisted his fingers, his ears itchy, feeling guilty. Okay. It's not for you. I just really want that bounty, promotion, and salary increase. After all, it's not good to keep asking you for pocket money. Let's go then. Without any hesitation, Zhuo Wu turned around and walked towards the insect nest. Acehan Mountain also follows with a jog. The fleshy starfish looked coldly at their backs, and even he could see that their relationship was not ordinary. Moreover, although the woman is fully armed, the man is unarmed. What does this mean? It shows that the man's brain is not working well and he is so naive. In a dangerous environment, women will definitely allocate their energy to take care of men, so wouldn't their own opportunities come? Struggling against an unknown number of insect people, starfish don't have the courage. But ambushing two foolish colleagues and blackening their equipment's courage. Starfish are not only present, but also very large. He stood up and painfully threw away a little insect-like organ. It's really lucky not to rush down. Just a few steps deeper inside, Zhuo Wu saw the bodies of several law enforcement colleagues who had just been flaunting their might on the floating ship. Of course, the number of corpses dropped by Bug Man is 100 times that of law enforcement officers. The outdated weapons they smuggle clearly cannot compete with the legitimate equipment of law enforcement officers. In the equally cramped passage, even the walls here are not as flat as the legitimate bugs in the colonies. But on the face of the fallen insect on the road, there emerged a sense of death as if returning home, while in contrast, law enforcement officers died in various ways. How can you tell from the abstract face of the insect person that you are willing to die? Zhuo Wu shook his head and faintly heard the sound of something violently exploding ahead. Zhuo Wu realized that he had been overthinking before, as the battle ahead seemed to have reached its final stage. The law enforcement officers were all surrounding the insect man who stood until the end. He was clearly much stronger than the corpses on the ground, and the equipment hanging on his body was even more elite. The scorching blue laser he emitted roared, and the spiritual impact continued like a sea roar. Coupled with a desperate aura, it really pushed more than 10 law enforcement officers too close. It's just that. Feeling a bit impatient waiting at the distant Acehan Mountain, I pouted and reached out. Lifting his thumb and index finger, he gestured towards the brave bug man with a gesture of a pistol. Piu. She whispered softly, with microwaves emanating from her fingertips wrapped in armor. The sturdy insect man who was still fighting suddenly froze, and then his hands, wielding weapons, drooped and fell in response. AI Shanshan leaned over and the weapon he had just used began to charge. Tell one or two of you to sell the enforcer's armor. The powerful weapons are all integrated inside. Go, I knocked down the gatekeeper, and of course, the head of the illegal queen inside is also mine. The law enforcement officers are still picking up the equipment of the bug man, and of course, they will stir up trouble upon hearing this. The leading law enforcement officer lifted his head, but exchanged a few glances with his companions. A few people immediately stepped forward, trying to stop Ace-Han Mountain. And the leader will take the opportunity to enter the insect palace. Ace-Han Mountain just raised his thumb and index finger again, and then pushed the encirclement back directly. The difference is too obvious. After all, the most expensive standard equipment for law enforcement officers are armor and helmets, and few thugs can resist the temptation to sell them like Ace-Han Mountain. But the encirclement still hasn't dispersed. AI Shanshan shrugged, the thrusters behind his waist were activated, and his tall feet floated up from the ground, drifting straight towards the edge of the enclosure. Soon, she got into a fight with the law enforcement officers. Zhuo Wu did not participate, only admired the heroic posture of Ace-Han Mountain beating these people with crooked eyes and noses in the distance, and waited for the battle team to move towards the palace before taking his own steps. Pushing aside the glowing hose hanging in front of the palace gate, AI Shanshan was still competing with his colleagues for the ownership of the weak queen. Zhuo Wu stood at the edge of the room to observe, feeling greatly disappointed. The limb bead curtains hanging from the ceiling here are far inferior to those of the legitimate queen, both in quantity and quality. At a glance, the end of the storage can be seen, some of which have even become white bones early on, completely losing the ability to implant insect eggs. Moreover, there was no elf's body that left Wu dynasty yearning for. Was it eaten as food? Or what other reason? A great depression emerged from the heart of Left Wu, who lowered his head and sighed. What should we do? Perhaps I will disappoint the elves greatly. Will she be angry in this situation? How should I apologize to her? No, no. This is not my own fault. How can I melt her guard of crossing half the Milky Way to a foreign land without finding her hands and feet as a bridge? Zhuo Wu pondered in distress as the body of the illegal queen was torn apart in the fight ahead. A worm head was thrown out and rolled unbiased to the feet of Zhuo Wu. He stepped on it and sighed at it. Tell me, where did you hide Miss Elf's hands and feet? Hidden. A flash of lightning suddenly flashed through his heart. Zhuo Wu stopped rolling the insect head's feet, feeling that there was something unusual in the palace. Where's the anomaly? Yes, the number of law enforcement officers here is quite small, only a dozen or so. And, most importantly, why didn't I even see a worm egg in front of the queen, a creature that only knows how to reproduce? Zhuo Wu suddenly looked up and happened to see AI Shanshan, who was cheering with both hands raised, emerge from the crowd ahead. She smiled very beautifully, even revealing her usually reluctant shark teeth. She held a still twitching heart in her hand. And the insect head that Zhuo Wu stepped on suddenly rubbed against his mouthpiece. Our tribe. Glory endures forever. Zhuo Wu kicked the insect head with force and shouted at her over there, Ace-Han Mountain. Come out. Hurry up. A few seconds later, tremors came from deep in the ground. AI Shanshan's smile stiffened as he was still playing around. He reflexively activated the thruster behind his waist, fully turning on the power. The trembling end was when the dark light directly devoured everything in front of Left Wu. The space in front of it, along with everything it contained, was completely annihilated, leaving not even an atom. An absolute vacuum cavity appeared in front of Zhuo Wu and behind the lucky escape of Ace-Han Mountain. The pressure inside this cavity is naturally zero, and the wind always flows from high pressure to low pressure. So, a hurricane appeared, rolling up Zhuo Wu, who weighed only a few tens of kilograms, and then colliding head-on with Ace-Han Mountain, which was still accelerating with its rear thrusters. AI Shanshan was shocked and knew that his current self was the most terrifying solid bullet for Left Wu. But the time is too short to stop the car. Left Wu, still enveloped by the storm, swiftly collided with the power armor of Ace-Han Mountain with his flesh and blood. Bang, click, click. The coldness that penetrated my heart and the fear of escaping by chance surged into the heart of Ace-Han Mountain. The strong wind finally calmed down, and she controlled the thrusters to land. She dared not lower her head to check the situation of Zhuo Wu. 441, no, Zhuo. Zhuo Wu. How are you doing? Ai Shanshan suddenly began to cry, and Zhuo Wu was her fresh savior. She stood on left Wu's shoulder, but dared not move at all. She heard that people with spinal or cranial fractures would lose their lives if they were slightly disturbed. Unexpectedly, Zhuo Wu just looked up with disdain and pushed away Ace-Han Mountain. A crushed insect head landed on the chest of the two. Zhuo Wu looks unscathed. Ai Shanshan was stunned. Is it because the insect head buffered the impact between them? How could it be? Ai Shanshan wanted to question loudly, but saw Zhuo Wu chuckle and his frustration disappear without a trace. That was an antimatter annihilation grenade just now. Advanced goods, we were being calculated by the bug man Ai Shanshan, come with me, cover me. Also, what you see next, I hope you keep it a secret for me. He clenched his fist and the air shook for a few minutes. Ai Shanshan pursed his lips and looked out the door. On the walls, on the ground, and on the ceiling, densely equipped insect warriors stood behind the door. The blue laser in their hands swayed, and the wings under their chitin shells hummed and trembled, but they were not demonstrating. But it has created a kind of intense fear that only those who have traveled in deep space would have. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Strength. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Strength. The power of all civilizations in the galaxy cannot be separated from two sentences. Either, it is, the heart is better than the object, transcendent and holy. Either it is, flesh and blood are bitter and weak, mechanical soaring. The latter sentence is about the path of matter and machinery, while the former sentence is about the path of spirit and spirituality. At least when various civilizations first entered the Starry Sea, the two routes exhibited vastly different forms. It is difficult for people nowadays to imagine how shocked they would be when a civilization piloting a steel ship collides with a civilization reciting a spell and sailing through the Starry Sea with a wooden boat. Of course, to this day, for most civilizations, material and spiritual paths have long been intertwined, and machinery and spirituality are increasingly inseparable from each other. Whether in daily life or in the use of weapons. But the insect people felt the ominous aura of the third root on the man in front of them. Ranked at the forefront, the insect's mouthparts closest to Zhuo Wu rub against their wings. The compatriots climbing up and down behind him have raised several laser rifles and aimed them at Zhuo Wu, who is barehanded and leisurely walking ahead, trying to pull the trigger. However, Zhuo Wu gently waved his hand towards these dark muzzles. Then, with him as the source, an inexplicable and majestic impact easily dissipated the encirclement ahead in the air. The first few insect people to bear the brunt were even directly crushed by this inexplicable impact. Ace-Han Mountain, who was planning to cover him behind Zhuo Wu, was stunned. This must not be a spiritual skill. This is. She hasn't had time to draw a conclusion yet, and the bugs haven't stopped firing their weapons. They do not shy away from the obstruction of their own compatriots in front, and shoot the blue laser out. Just like in ancient times when Africans hunted elephants on Earth, the blue beam of light was so dense that it could instantly turn all enemies into hedgehogs. The interior of the light column has a high temperature of nearly 12,000 degrees Celsius, which can melt the porcelain on the surface of warships. Ai Shanshan quickly opened her deflected shield for herself, wanting to exclaim in surprise because she didn't have time to step forward to protect Left Wu. What's even more terrifying is that Left Wu didn't dodge, allowing the deadly laser to enter his arms like this. After a deadly burst, the dazzling laser stopped firing. The insect people hung down their rifles one after another, and the sound of their rifles overheating and charging echoed through the passage. The sound of insect people flapping their wings was dense, revealing their panic at this moment. Because they clearly saw that the blue laser accurately hit Zuowu, but it did not cause any damage. The moment the light touched his body, it disappeared without a trace, not to mention the melting it should have, not even a single burn. However, Zuowu seized the opportunity of the bug man shooting interval and retreated to the protected area of Acehan Mountain. He patted her shoulder and said, "Be careful to protect me." The charging of those laser rifles was finally completed, but it was one step late. Zuowu imitated the appearance of Acehan Mountain and raised his finger towards them. The next moment, a blue laser several times more dazzling than those emitted from these ancient rifles was excited from the left Wu fingertip. Instantly melted more than 10 insect people who were stunned there. But Zuowu was not satisfied. The high temperature of 12,000 degrees is indeed unnecessary. He frowned and adjusted the power of the laser emitted from his fingertips. Quickly, the blue light dimmed, repeated several times, and finally adjusted to a level that was just enough to cut open the chitin shell of the insect. Opening up sources and reducing costs will make it more sustainable. This is just right. Zuowu nodded and picked it up with his fingertips. A slightly dim blue light shot straight out, and with a casual wave, countless insect-like shells and tendons broke apart. They were already standing densely, so the circle drawn by Zuowu was an efficient massacre. Moreover, this fingertip shines endlessly, much more powerful than the suppressive power of those single-shot rifles. So, the intimidating encirclement instantly disintegrated. Even if sporadic Zerg people successfully counterattack, the sparse light is absorbed by the shield erected by Acehan Mountain. Until the last enemy in sight was cut in two, Zuowu stopped the light from his fingertips, clenched his fist, and walked forward, but did not see Ai Shanshan following. He turned his head in confusion and said, "What's wrong?" "Just now." "What was that?" Ai Shanshan breathed in, his eyes as bright as the sea blinked without blinking. "It's definitely not a spiritual skill, is it?" "No, it's not. It's not like any country secretly developing nanoweapons or the like." "Not really. So there's only one possibility left." Ai Shanshan caressed his chest, and the heart located in the center of his chest thumped. "You are the patron of the gods. Gaia is above, I have seen the living patron." The so-called patron refers to a person who is noticed by certain ancient beings in the deep sky, and thus gains various strange and peculiar abilities. The technology of various civilizations today may be able to replicate the effects of these abilities, but it simply cannot explain the principles behind their emergence on individuals. What is unknown is the source of fear. Even the most enlightened civilization maintains great vigilance towards its patrons and the ancient existence that favors them. Zuowu scratched his hair, seeming somewhat embarrassed. Actually, there are more beneficiaries than the government claims. That, Ai Shanshan ran over to Zuowu's side, his cheeks slightly red, twisted his fingers, and there seemed to be mosquito-repellent incense swirling in his eyes. "That's. Can you tell me what your favor is?" "I promise not to say it." Ai Shanshan used a respectful title for some reason, and Zuowu nodded. After spending several months together, he has a considerable degree of trust in the girl in front of him. The explanation is simple, it's just about absorption and release. Zuowu turned his head, and the reinforcements of the illegal insect people had arrived. Looking at the corpses of my fellow countrymen on the ground, I couldn't help but see another burst of laser fire. Zuowu opened his arms to welcome the laser, and the result was exactly the same as last time. The moment the light touched his body, it disappeared completely. This is absorption. After he finished speaking, he took advantage of the interval between the insect man's shooting and retreated to the cover of Acehan Mountain. His fingertip laser burst out again, creating another effortless massacre. This is release. The light of counterattack echoed and hit the shield of Acehan Mountain. Zuowu exhaled and knocked down the attacking insect man, saying, "But when it's absorbed, it can't be released. When it's released, it can't be absorbed." This is my weakness. Ace-Han Shan blinked. Did he just tell himself his weakness like this? Also, absorption and release. It's so interesting. The impact of our previous collision with Zhuo Wu was absorbed by him and then released to the Zerg without any changes. Is it because he is so rich, collecting energy that should have escaped from nature anytime and anywhere? Did you guess correctly? AI Shanshan reached out to Left Wu and realized that he had too many questions to ask. But this man has already finished the QA session and walked steadily forward. He wants to find the body of the elf he likes. I inexplicably feel a sense of emptiness in my heart, just like a long-awaited but out-of-stock product appearing in the hands of others, a little sad. Zhuo Wu kicked away the body blocking the way and muttered in front, we should think about the purpose of the bug man. They created this fake palace and set up traps for what? They plundered our limbs to kill the law enforcement officers and provide nutrients for the bug's nest to hatch eggs. It's impossible. The traps used antimatter grenades, and the people caught in them wouldn't even have a single atom left. AI Shanshan raised his hand and said. Well, Lord Zhuo Wu, I think Bug Man wants to run. Why? Think about it, the colonies are still here, and there must be an endless number of law enforcement officers who will come over. Even if the Bug Man really kills all the law enforcement officers and reserves, wouldn't it be enough for them to manage AI to launch a ground-penetrating bomb here? AI Shanshan stepped forward, feeling that he should behave well. So traps only have two effects, the first is to slow down our speed. The second is. Just try to ensure that no one knows the direction they are escaping. Zhuo Wu Xinran nodded. So, the real palace should be in the place with the most traps. The words have just finished. The familiar dull explosion sounded faintly, which was the movement of the precious annihilation grenade detonating. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Will. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Will. It is said that some authoritarian leaders of certain civilizations greatly hope that the people are a part of the honeycomb society. Because in this society, the ruled will never have any dissent and will always dedicate everything to the collective. This idea is only half right. Rebellion still occurs in beehive societies, sometimes due to the decline in the fertility of the queen and forced to do so, and sometimes because lower-level members happen to break free from the queen's neurotransmitter information and decide to establish their own ethnic group. But it cannot be denied that, excluding these accidental factors, the cohesion of the honeycomb society is so strong that it is outrageous. For example, soldiers, while other civilizations are still struggling with training and morale, even newborn children of the bug people can remain the same as their fellow countrymen. At the deeper depths of the foot of Zhuo Wu and Ace-Han mountains, thousands of insect people are marching. Each person has several pure white eggs stuck in the gaps between their shells, which is their future and hope. The queen, who has difficulty moving, has been taken care of by more people. Her abdomen, which was originally several kilometers long, was cut to only a dozen meters, so that she could possibly be transferred. However, even so, the queen has not given up on childbirth. The remaining abdomen wriggled again, and as soon as a batch of new eggs were conceived, they were immediately taken away by the tribe's worm people. And as each tribe walked, they fed animal limbs into the queen's abdomen. This queen cannot taste the taste, but she will not regret it, because it is her innate mission. Of course, as a queen, besides having children, she also needs to think. The daily interactions of the subordinate tribes will gather their respective ideas together, but the final decision still needs to be made by her. Why? The colonial government came too quickly. Although predictions and evaluations have already been made, her population needs to grow at least 100 times larger than it is now before it can be detected by management AI. But by then, the smuggled equipment should have already taken shape, and the agreed-upon foreign aid should have also arrived. It's hard to say who will eventually fall into the hands of the entire planet. This should be the right way. The illegal queen harbors resentment because the genes of the Strolls have been altered. They are confined to other civilizations like prisoners, only given a pitiful breeding spot due to their obedience and labor. It shouldn't be like this. Our own tribe is the same orthodox as our ancestors, a free tribe that has already entered the sea of stars. Mouth friction, this is the queen roaring oath. She must once again enter the vast deep space with the tribe hesitating in front and behind her. Law enforcement officers have never had one mind. So, even if there is a gap between the equipment, and the bug man is suddenly attacked, there is still a chance to break them down one by one. In the narrow passage, there are countless intersections. The law enforcement officers from various teams who do not know how to communicate with each other enter, and they all believe that they are the lucky ones who have found the palace. The result can only be that they have been completely harvested by the traps containing annihilation grenades and the lurking insect people. The law enforcement officers of a certain team are panting heavily due to almost exhaustion of energy. They were covered in blood and had already lost most of their personnel after running through several traps before. The Kachung people continue to surround them in an endless stream, forcing law enforcement officers to temporarily cooperate and hand over their backs to colleagues who usually have grievances. The bug man experienced another suicidal charge, pushing their standard equipment to the limit. Finally, a grinding sound was heard, and a law enforcement officer angrily threw away the scrapped armor, shouting loudly, "Brothers, we can't hold it anymore. How about the government quickly provide us with support?" Previously on the ship, the calm Tauren, who had a chance encounter with Suo Wu and the others, took a deep breath and said, "Support. Where did we get support from? A colleague who stays on top and is ready to pick up our bodies at any time. Don't dream about it." The law enforcement officer who shouted remained silent, but in the end, he simply sat down on the ground and said, "Damn it, what energy coins. I don't want them anymore, Grandpa. Let's quickly withdraw and let the AI come here with a ground-penetrating bullet to pull them down." The bullhead's pupils shrank and he turned around to kick his complaining colleague over, saying, "Stop it. Maybe the AI on his head is listening to us. So what? The only reason why AI sent us down is because we are cheaper than ground-penetrating bombs. If we fail or show any signs of giving up, do you think it will not hesitate to choose a slightly higher cost backup plan and blow up this place upside down?" The bullhead chuckled and knocked over a crawling bug man, "Even if we haven't withdrawn at all. I can't." The person sitting on the ground clearly didn't believe it. "Aren't we law enforcement officers? We should be considered a family with the AI in the colony." The Tauren shook his head and sneered, "Brother, where is your hometown?" 2841 sectors, Tifeng Star, the person raised his chest. "In my language, Tifeng means harvest and hope. A beautiful name, hey. Do you know what the planet under our feet is called now?" "I don't know, the tentative industrial planet 2212 is the name of this place," the Tauren gritted his teeth. "It's not a name like Tifeng that contains gratitude and hope, it's a cold code name. The people here have been extinct for thousands of years, and no one treats it as their hometown now. Even we are hurried passers-by. As long as the industrial zone is completely built and fully automated, everyone and AI will withdraw, and this is still the same dead planet. So, we don't need to be responsible here, and on the other hand, this place and the Imperial Alliance won't be responsible to us either. The Imperial Alliance and we are not a family at all." The bullhead laughed heartily and said, "From the moment we left our home planet, we have been homeless wanderers. What connects us to the Imperial Alliance is not our blood relationship, not our cultural identity, but just a few thousandths of the energy coin. Even if the Imperial Alliance abandons us wanderers, there will be no burden. After hundreds and thousands of light years, we wanderers cannot work hard for our homes. But it's not so sad that we can't even work hard for the money right in front of us, can we?" He still smiled and sounded a bit bold as he said, "If you want to leave, you can leave. Anyway, I think living in this world should work hard for something, even if the humble are only for money." Suo Wu and Acehan Mountain are drilling towards the area with the most traps. And the former has a slightly larger head because AI Shan has become a curious baby at some point. Zwo woo, you mean absorption and release, right? Just absorbed the blue laser and released it, she gestured to a pistol position with her hand. But why do you need to open up and cut corners? If you pay attention to absorbing sunlight on a daily basis, shouldn't the available light be endless? I can only decide on the type of absorption, and adjusting the amount of absorption is very difficult. Zwo Wu shook his head and said, for example, sunshine, it took me a long time to adjust to a suitable quantity. If I want to make changes, if I'm not careful, I won't be able to see things, and maybe I'll freeze to death. Ha! Sucking sunlight into your body will also freeze you. I say it's absorption, but I don't know exactly where the absorbed thing is stored, anyway I can't feel the impact of the absorbed thing on me. Zwo Wu shook his head and said, and just think about it, if I absorbed the blue laser but didn't get burned, it means the temperature won't stay in my body. Amidst their laughter and conversation, they had already killed countless bugs. Like a disaster star, there is almost no living creature near the trap that was originally used as an ambush. Therefore, they were able to excavate the antimatter grenades buried underground in the trap. AI Shanshan held it in his hand and observed, it's not a weapon from our Imperial Alliance. Perhaps it has been produced for 100 or 200 years and is still so beautiful. I can't tell. Zwo Wu shook his head, thinking that the elf he bought back looked the best. She was like a Venus with a broken arm. Venus with broken arms. Broken arm. It is said that this renowned sculpture has gained its current status because of its incompleteness, which has given people infinite imagination. And what about the elf I bought myself? If I had her hands and feet connected properly, would I still feel that kind of heart-pounding sensation? Zwo Wu suddenly pinched his chin in fear, feeling that his thoughts were somewhat frightening. But curious baby AI Shanshan didn't notice his abnormality, just holding the grenade and unleashing his imagination. Zwo Wu, what about the annihilated space caused by this grenade? I don't know, I haven't tried. He regained his senses, and his gaze reflected the blue eyes of the mountains and rivers of AI Mountain. Her face was still flushed, and even her toes were alternating back and forth, as if she had some indescribable and boundless expectations for herself. Don't even think about it, Ace Han Mountain, Zwo Wu chuckled. This is something that can even annihilate space. Oh, it's scary, I don't want to try it at all. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Encounter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Encounter. The management-oriented AI of colonies has indeed left a lasting impression on some law enforcement officers. After all, everyone's equipment is produced in colonies, and achieving this is the foundation of the foundation. It's also easy to avoid its monitoring, just be proficient in modifying power armor like Ace Han Mountain. But this time, the AI is not listening. After assigning tasks, it concentrates all its computing power on another more important matter. That's to find out where the equipment used by the illegal bug people comes from. AI is muttering to itself. Docking the ship, there are no abnormalities. Freight passage, no abnormalities. Trade channels. Damn it, this is an industrial planet under construction, and even civilian industrial entities haven't had time to clean up yet. Where did we get a trade channel? AI began to get angry. No. There's nothing, it's strange. So many prohibited items can't be transported here without a trace, but why can't we find them anyway? Did it fall from the sky? It's impossible either. I've checked all the meteorite monitoring records recently, but there's still nothing left. It roared, followed by an indescribable noise. Noise is a crude and vulgar phrase. Management-oriented AI has gathered over 2 million languages, and it can play with profanity with the same meaning for hundreds of years. In his career, this gradually became his little interest. Swearing is just a remedy, it still needs to find a way to solve the problem. So, although it felt a bit painful, AI still decided to raise the price for those law enforcement officers below. Let them capture the illegal queen's life, and with a little more forced confession, won't the source of those prohibited equipment be easily solved? Wait a moment. If this management-oriented AI has a body, then it must have shuddered just now. It remembered that it had been serving in the Imperial Alliance for nearly 5 centuries, which can be considered as the earliest batch of autonomous artificial intelligence. Now, my replicated and improved products have already been installed on the main battleship, or shine brightly in the capital. And due to certain innate flaws, I can only manage such a frontier planet. Now that such a big mistake has occurred on this planet, what's even more deadly is that if it weren't for the reminders from the law enforcement officers under their command, that entire armed rebel army would have emerged under their own noses. It trembled and then remembered a legal loophole in the Imperial Alliance. An AI without any physical entity, strictly speaking, can only be classified as a program, and does not have limited human rights like robots within the Imperial Alliance. The result is that if the Imperial Alliance finds out about this, then their outdated goods will no longer be able to escape the fate of being dismantled, right? Fortunately, whether it's illegal insect humans or weapons and equipment from unknown sources, they are still known to the law enforcement officers below. Without hesitation, the AI cut off all communication with the people below. Then, seemingly afraid of not completely extinguishing the mouth, it pulled out the ground-penetrating bullet and the penetrating laser as the last resort, aiming them at the ground from top to bottom. That's it. Anyway, the only buyers of smuggled weapons are those ugly bugs, and they've all taken care of it. Let's just pretend there's no such thing as a damn thing. AI seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. As for the reason, well, the illegal bugs are the enemies of the world, and it is our duty to eliminate them. A small accidental injury is not worth mentioning in front of the future of the Milky Way. Easily convincing oneself, AI is somewhat bored. It will take some time for the weapons to be ready. Scientists have proven that the entire world has more than one dimension. The hyperspace lanes scattered throughout the Milky Way are a manifestation of a high-dimensional world, and this theory also makes it possible for dimensionality reduction strikes that only exist in science fiction novels. Now, regarding the deep application of high-dimensional space, various civilizations or regimes that have been ranked ahead have already learned some superficial knowledge. And at a meeting of the Star-Sea Alliance, this technology was given a unified name. Void technology. Located in high-dimensional space. An object in the void that cannot be observed and influenced by the outside world in lower dimensions. But on the contrary, it can analyze external intelligence like a surgical knife, taking in everything from a perspective and width that ordinary people cannot imagine. And now, there is a mechanical creation with astonishing beauty standing in the turbulent flow of the void where matter and spirit intersect. On top of the mechanical creations, there is a symbol of the renowned Emperor's online driving team. But this logo was turned into snowflakes by something sharp. The driver in the creation looked coldly at the small movements of the AI, moved his hand several times to the control panel, but hesitated for a long time before finally putting it down. He sighed and casually sent a message to the insect man underground. After a moment, they disappeared together with the mechanical creation in the turbulent flow of the void. The step it takes in the void corresponds to the thousands of miles of reality. The illegal queen was stunned for a moment. She suddenly struggled to lift her upper body, and behind her, thousands of tribes were still marching in an orderly manner. In front of them, the tribe with specialized mouthparts is still using engineering equipment to quickly expand underground passages, barely ensuring the smooth progress of the army. In theory, she only needs to be given 2 more hours to lead her tribe out of the AI's monitoring range and then hibernate deep in the earth. According to the intelligence received from our partners, we may have less than 10 minutes left for ourselves now. Brave soldiers must break their wrists. She rubbed her mouthparts, causing her closest tribe to line up and move forward. She also threw away all the unhatched eggs and larvae to light up and simplify, maybe there was still time. But at this moment, she heard a sound of shouting and killing at the end of the team. The neurotransmitter information transmitted by the worm sentinel is now connected to the queen's nerves, causing her fur to stand upright. The scene we saw was actually a group of extremely brave law enforcement officers, led by a bullhead, soaked in blood all over, howling and biting the end of their own team. The reason why the queen wants to broaden her channels is because if the team is lined up in one line, it will greatly reduce her own combat power. The blue laser launcher that was finally obtained, not to mention using accumulation to kill enemies, it's good to not string your own people together and kill them. The steam generated by overheating sprouted on the surface of the queen. Perhaps what is needed now is not a brave man's wrist, but a brave man's head. Fortunately, it's really fortunate. I am a proud insect, and even if a settlement is left with only myself, there is still a chance for it to flourish again. Without hesitation, she waved her hand. Transmission of neurotransmitters, the 9 adult insect people behind immediately gave up moving, a small number turned their heads to resist the law enforcement officers, and the majority raised their heads to dig upwards. After preparing to reach the ground, run in the opposite direction of the queen. This is the consensus of the tribe, millions of lives can be earned even if the aiming center of the AI is slightly moved. And the queen herself will be transported forward by several guards and several tribes loaded with food. Although my vitality is greatly damaged, it's nothing more than lying dormant waiting for the next decade. Crossing the narrow corridor, there are unprocessed natural stalactites everywhere ahead. The water droplets falling from it are filtered by the Earth's crust, making it the rare natural pure water on this planet. Water droplets dripped onto the queen's shell, and then evaporated due to her scorching body temperature. She vaguely envied the water that dissipated in the air. The water droplets are still dripping, 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops, becoming more and more urgent. The queen suddenly ordered a halt to the advance. The stalactites trembled and broke down, causing the rock layer above the insect to suddenly shatter. In the crevice, Suowu jumped down with his foot, a deep layer of helplessness on his face. I didn't say it, Ace Han Mountain. Although I can absorb solids, the absorption speed is incredibly slow. Only purer things like impact, light, and heat can absorb them instantly. Ha! Is that why you entrusted me with the task of breaking rock layers? Suowu, how fast is incredibly slow. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have had the audacity to ask you so many things. AI Shanshan followed at the left foot of Wu, her power armor emitting an overheated red light. Then, seeing the team ahead, I was also surprised and let out a hey. The water droplets on the stalactite were still falling, and along with the queen's somewhat heavy breathing, they were the only sound now. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Dream of Premature Death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The Dream of Premature Death. Suowu was looking at the illegal queen she had met for the first time. As he knows, all the genes of the Strolls have been altered, and this betrayed queen is no exception. Her appearance has been modified to resemble a human figure, with a chitin shell constructing her face and slender limbs. She was just drenched in the spring water dripping from the stalactites, her abdominal scars were shocking, and even her face's carapace and simulated hair were messy. If the legitimate queen I saw in the settlement before looked like a dignified queen, then the one in front of me was a distressed and embarrassed princess. Now is the era of the Milky Way, where billions of creatures are enjoying a geometric explosion of information in the galaxy. Some humans have even more infuriating tendencies in certain aspects. If the illegal queen in front of them were to be placed in front of them, there would probably be an endless carnival. With a hiss, Suowu secretly took a cold breath. Remind yourself repeatedly that you must not be such a person. My own preferences are very normal, and I don't like elves because they are food sold in the shop window, let alone because she is Venus with a broken arm. Definitely. The illegal queen is still silent. The smoke rising from her body indicated that she was thinking at high speed and already knew their identities. Unlike the enforcers at the end, what the Queen never wants to meet are these two people who slaughter their fully armed ethnic group like chickens. But Suowu finally regained his mind and looked at Ace Han Mountain on the side, saying, "You first, I first. What should I do first?" AI Shanshan blinked in confusion. "Ah. Oh, about the bounty and salary increase. Well, come on, I don't need it anymore." Ace Han Mountain has now witnessed the hidden mountains of gold and silver in the man's body before him, and a mere bounty seems really insignificant. She just needs to think about how to make that mountain of gold and silver have her own name, her forked tongue licking her lips. Suowu nodded impolitely and walked up to the Queen to rub her hands. "Your tribe purchased a pair of hands and feet from the butcher shop, and I will tell you the butcher shop number. It doesn't mean anything else, I just want to get it back. Of course, I'm not discussing it with you." As he spoke, he reported the 8-digit number of the store and brushed past the Queen, causing her to tremble with fear. Suowu walked directly to the insects with specialized food storage functions and waved his hand. The dark blue laser that had been stored before and had not yet been used up was fired casually, and the worm man was immediately dismantled in 8 pieces. Repeatedly, most of the Queen's tribe was killed or injured, and precious meat and her young eggs scattered all over the ground. The Queen remained silent. Suowu looked around and collapsed in disappointment. "No." He gritted his teeth and turned his head. "See. Tell me the whereabouts of your hands and feet." The destitute princess in front of her twitched her carapace on her face and said, "Of course, our tribe is a beehive consciousness, and naturally knows what you are pursuing, but as you can see, it is not by my side." "Where is that?" "I don't know for now. Because our ethnic group's memories are stored separately, and the ethnic group that holds these memories has been dragged by other law enforcement officers behind their backs. They must be brought back and exchanged with me for neurotransmitters, so that I can know the specific location." The Queen looked towards the dark rear, with a strange light flashing in her compound eyes. "However, one thing to remind you of is that your management AI will launch a bombing here in 8 minutes and 40 seconds, or a combination of ground-penetrating bombs and lasers." Suowu turned around and looked at Ace Han Mountain. AI Shanshan was taken aback and immediately turned around to try to contact the government. After several failures, a hint of anger appeared in his eyebrows and eyes. They were sold by that stinky AI. "What should I do?" AI Shanshan immediately sent a message to Suowu from his perspective. Suowu replied with a reassuring look, "Don't worry, I can absorb the vibration of the burrowing bullet and the temperature of the penetrating laser. As long as there is physical contact between you and me, I can also absorb the damage inflicted on you. There is still time." "Oh." AI Shanshan chuckled foolishly, "Then I'm watching the illegal Queen here, waiting for you to retrieve the ethnic group she mentioned. After all, the Queen still has a several-meter-long abdomen, making it inconvenient to transport her. No one can guarantee that she won't lie when the attack arrives." Suowu shook his head seriously and said, "You have to walk with me. My arm span is only a little wide, but I can't protect you who are staying hundreds of meters away." "Oh." Seemingly moved, AI Shanshan took a deep breath and suddenly turned his head. He pulled out a pink grenade from his power armor and without hesitation hung it on the Queen. "Don't think about taking it off. It's something I've specially modified. Take it off, or if I notice you're running away, it'll explode immediately. Although its power may be inferior to your antimatter devices, it's more than enough to kill you." The Queen gently raised her hand to surrender, telling her that she would not resist, and then revealed the characteristics of those tribes with memories. Suowu nodded, reached out and grabbed AI Shanshan's wrist. In the sky, the AI is bored. After all, preparing weapons is much simpler than complicated calculations. The preheating of the laser and the printing and loading of live ammunition are about to be completed, perhaps even slightly earlier than expected. AI Shanshan cannot use the thruster on his waist, because holding onto her will absorb all the force that touches him. But even so, their speed is not inferior. The impact and friction of the insect blocking the way will be sucked away by Zuowu, making the two of them slide through the insect like fish. This is a wonderful experience that has given AI Shanshan some small speculations. For example, if Zuowu could absorb the electromagnetic force between atoms in the enemy's body, what a terrifying character he would be. But it shouldn't be possible. After all, Left Wu can only decide on the type of absorption and cannot affect the source and amount of absorption. If he really wants to attract electromagnetic force and doesn't pay attention to disturbing his body composition, then maybe Zuowu himself will explode before the enemy, right? Is it like this? It's so interesting. AI Shanshan pouted and realized that his curiosity had flourished like a forest. Zuowu did not notice the careful thinking of AI Shanshan, and the search for those targets went very smoothly. After all, the insect people who store memories already hold a prominent position in the tribe, and their shells have special patterns. Even in chaotic situations, they can be quickly recognized. Left Wu leaned towards those insect people. Their actions were discovered by several law enforcement colleagues who were interspersed with killings in the insect swarm, but were repelled and driven away by AI Shanshan muttering, "Sorry, sorry, sorry." It seems that the queen left behind neurotransmitters on the two of them. When the memory worm man saw Zuowu and AI Shanshan, he immediately followed them without reservation. 1, 2, 3. The quantity seems to be less than what the queen informed us, but that's all we can do. 6 minutes and 12 seconds left. AI Shanshan whispered, "Time is running out." Zuowu nodded and ran back to the queen's place with those insect people. The speed of the return journey is slightly slower because he cannot share his favor with all the bugs. But the memory bug people also have a solution. They only need to touch each other with their peers, and the latter will pay the greatest price to make way for the memory bug people. Is this also the power of the queen's neurotransmitter? With a slight restlessness in his heart, after several seconds, Zuowu finally returned to the queen's place. "Is she sitting at the door welcoming you?" And the surviving guards who were originally taking care of the fallen queen suddenly rushed out together, but turned to those few memory bugs. Then, right in front of Zuowu and Acehan Mountain, the personal guard unhesitatingly dismantled the memory bug man in 8 pieces. Their killing efficiency is even comparable to that of Zuowu's blue laser, probably due to the fact that the memory worm man had no resistance and actively relaxed his joints. The personal guard removed the organs of the memory worm man and ran back to the queen to assemble the newly removed parts for her. The queen trembled for a moment, then looked up thoughtfully and waved to Left Wu. "Ha! Is there a result?" Zuowu still held onto AI Shanshan's hand and eagerly leaned towards the fallen queen. But she saw her slender arms stretched out of chitin, resting on the Left Wu shoulder. Next second, a crisp sound came from the sky downwards. Like a shooting star kissing the earth. A blazing beam of light falls, accompanied by intense impacts from deep within the earth. The floating ship in the sky launched an attack, and the giant rocks flipped open underground were easily lifted to the boundary dozens of kilometers away. AI is satisfied. Zuowu will absorb solids slowly, but he has indeed been hit by live fire weapons. So what happens when a speeding bullet lands on him? It will instantly lose all kinetic energy and its speed will drop from terrifying kilometers per second to 0. Then he was easily captured by gravity and fell quietly to the ground. The same goes for attacks from ground-penetrating bombs and penetrating lasers. The impact that swept through and the temperature of the laser were directly absorbed by Zuowu. The lifted boulder immediately slid down when it hit them, and was then swept away by successive impacts. Even as the turbulent airflow flowed through him, he became calm and steady. The queen's several guards were shattered at the moment of the attack, and she watched helplessly as it all happened. Compared to that, Zuowu, carrying Mount AI and the queen, was simply strolling leisurely in this devastating apocalyptic scene. He even had the leisure to block a few large pieces of gravel with his feet, evaluating them as broken and unsightly. After more than 10 minutes, the impact finally dissipated. The recent commotion may have been a rare commotion after this planet fell silent tens of thousands of years ago. Zhuo Wu looked up and put down the frightened Ace Han Mountain and the Queen. The just impact caused the accumulated clouds in the sky to disappear almost completely. A sunny day falls, and the blue sun and the aurora in the sky complement each other. The Queen rubbed her mouthparts and slowly became lonely. She lifted her body and spoke of her most disliked human language. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" "That's right." Zhuo Wu nodded. "But we bug people don't like to stay in the wilderness, do you know? Just found out. Now, your girlfriend has walked to a place more than 10 meters away from you. Have you noticed it?" Zhuo Wu turned to Ace Han Mountain in confusion and saw that she seemed to be attracted by the beautiful scenery. She strolled, her attention fixed on the sky. The Queen suddenly bounced her arms wrapped in chitin shells and threw an antimatter grenade at the careless Ace Han Mountain. But the words she rubbed out of her mouth were still aimed at Zhuo Wu, in the same tone as when she just sighed at the beautiful scenery. "You can absorb and release. But apart from this favor, your physical abilities are no different from ordinary people, right? Can you catch up with this grenade flying slowly at a speed of 15 meters per second?" The grenade leisurely swept through the air, and its speed was indeed too slow compared to the sky-shattering dust and stones just now, but it also exceeded the human running speed by too much. But Zhuo Wu doesn't need to pursue. Previously, when playing with Ace Han Mountain in a trap, she passionately explained to herself in detail the structure of this antique grenade. So Zhuo Wu just reached out and the blue laser burst out, accurately cutting off the fuse of the thrown grenade. The grenade slammed into the back of Mount Ai's head, causing her to turn around in a daze. But the Queen waved her slender yet sharp branches and let out an almost sharp roar. "But when you absorb it, you can't release it. When you release it, you can't absorb it, can't you?" Limbs thrust forward. Insects on Earth can bounce themselves to heights several times their body length through muscle strength, and the Queen's spikes also have the power of a car colliding forward with all its might. When Zhuo Wu was released, he couldn't absorb it, indicating that at this moment, he was just an ordinary human who could not be more fragile. The light of the blue laser immediately disappeared, and the Queen's sharp claws also pierced onto Left Wu's body. Zhuo Wu calmly turned around and looked at the destitute and lonely princess in front of her. The light and shadow in her compound eyes changed, watching her unable to move forward even with all her strength. Just like piercing into an unfathomable sea, the power of the bet is absorbed without a trace. After a moment, the Queen lowered her hand in despair and collapsed directly on the ground, looking up at the deep blue sun with a relaxed smile in her tone. "Why can you switch between absorption and release so quickly? This is simply cheating." "Actually, it can be considered as seamless switching." Zhuo Wu scratched his hair a bit helplessly. "How did you know about my favor?" "My tribe caught a starfish who had been secretly observing you all along. He seemed to want to plot against you, so he eavesdropped on your conversation all over." The Queen shrugged and said, "Just a little confession and we'll all take action." "So," Zhuo Wu nodded, "I don't intend to avenge these colleagues, and you don't need to attack me. What about the hands and feet I want?" "In my stomach," the Queen chuckled lightly, "I don't have a taste, but its delicious scent is truly impressive." This is exactly what the legitimate insect leader in the settlement said. Zhuo Wu breathed in and said, "Can you spit it out?" "The strolls don't have this feature, and the bugs never surrender their captured prey. This way." Zhuo Wu slowly crouched down and touched the Queen's abdomen. "I'm sorry, then." The destitute Queen closed her eyes and the carapace on her face pieced together into a true smile. "No, there's no need to apologize. It's me who's not skilled enough. No, it's just that I'm just weak. Isn't that the true nature of the Milky Way? Beyond 6 million civilizations, there are weak flesh and strong prey everywhere. Perhaps, he nodded, it won't hurt very much. The blue laser burst out once again, but the Queen's eyes were still looking at the even bluer sun in the sky. She asked, "Do you know what star that is? Is it a pulsar?" A pulsar is a dying star that emits brilliant light and heat as if returning to light. However, this near-death is still calculated on a million-year scale. Yes, pulsars. They send regular signals deep into the universe. Thousands of years ago, when the Milky Way wasn't as lively as before, this signal would always be recognized as a signal from other civilizations. Nowadays, this signal is just a noise for those regimes who are like gods. But for civilizations that have just entered deep space, it can still be an accurate timer for civilizations on starships. Therefore, it can also be used to write new calendars. She exclaimed, "I've already figured it out. After my tribe and I enter the galaxy again, we will no longer use the name Strau and will change it to Stella." From that moment on, it was the new year determined by the free Stella using the new calendar. The Queen's face suddenly twisted, not because of the pain from the blue laser cutting on her, but because of a more bone-wrenching sadness. I'm not willing. The Milky Way and even the universe should be so big. But why can't I find a free home that belongs to me? Left Wu Muron. After a long time, he lifted the Queen's face and whispered, "As you said, the law of the jungle is just a case of the jungle. However, you don't have to be unwilling." He murmured a sentence in the Queen's ear, and her face, which had been twisted with resentment, suddenly froze. Then, she showed a calm and relieved expression. In the next moment of laser flashing, the consciousness of the destitute princess fell into eternal darkness. Zhuo Wu looked at her abdomen, which had been cut open, with a left leg and a right hand shining brightly inside that haunted him. Taking it out solemnly, Ai Shanshan walked with his back in his hand, looking at the blue light of the pulsar in the Queen's compound eyes and kicking the dust on the ground. "What did you say to her?" "I told her that I would record her genetic information and perhaps one day find an unmanned planet to clone her tribe again." Zhuo Wu stood up and shrugged, "The ultimate goal of the bug man is reproduction. Her bloodline has not been cut off, and I have directly realized her dream. This should be a good ending for this queen. Hey, it's so meaty. Why are you doing this?" Zhuo Wu opened his mouth, wanting to say that he just wanted everything to have a happy ending. But at the tip of my tongue, I changed my mind. Just scratching my hair, making my expression look a bit shy. Because Bug Nyang is great, I want to raise her myself. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Spoils of War. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Spoils of War. Let go of the inexplicable and deep emotions in my heart for now. Now, it's a happy time to count the spoils of war. Ai Shanshan leaped and crouched down, digging a small ditch on the ground. 14 antimatter grenades she had seized were neatly arranged and placed inside, imagining the damage they could cause. She was overjoyed in her heart. And from the inscriptions on these grenades, it appears that they must have come from a regime that was destroyed by the Imperial Alliance. It should be noted that the Imperial Alliance has always dealt with enemies in a way that defeats both industrial and cultural heritage. This means that these grenades are out of print, and holding them can make one feel the weight of history. Ai Shanshan wiped the corners of his mouth and had the opportunity to show off to his friends who were also obsessed with creation on the Imperial Alliance network. It's just that I have to brag about them as civilized relics, otherwise those poisonous friends will definitely criticize them in a disdainful tone. Feeling a bit lost in thought, Ai Shanshan turned around to seek the opinion of Zhuo Wu. But I saw him staring blankly at the limb he had taken back. One arm, one leg. Zhuo Wu held them in his arms. The skin on these limbs is very delicate, without any body hair, and even if you get close, you can't see any rough pores. The shape of the palms and feet was so natural that Swole couldn't help but want to gently rub them against his face. But Swole didn't give up, just sighed in his heart that he was still one step late. They have cavities inside that have been eaten, and there are also traces of being burned by the acid in the queen's abdomen on the surface, no longer as shiny and flawless as the elf's own skin. However, it doesn't matter. It has been 3,142 years. A bottle of spray can solve this minor injury. However, Swole noticed something unusual, which was that the bones of the scattered limbs in front of him were very soft, almost between solid and liquid. Is this because the limbs have started to rot, or is it because the elves in the house have this kind of physique? He frowned and recalled, but unfortunately did not come to a conclusion. It was not wrong for me to bring the elf back to the apartment, but I was so careful at the time that I didn't dare to use any extra effort to hold her. Just like treating a priceless artwork, I only felt that her body was indeed soft all the way, but I never thought about the aspect of her bones. It seems like I'm getting more and more worried. Swole immediately stood up and wanted to rush straight home. But the back hem was pulled by Ace-Han Mountain. She crossed her waist and said, "Wait a minute, did you forget anything before you went back?" "What?" AI Shanshan pointed to the sky and said, "We still have to go find that stinky AI to receive the reward gold." Swole frowned and said, "The bounty. It's just a small amount of money, isn't it necessary?" Wu. It seemed that the attitude of Swole's disdain for money had shaken his mentality. AI Shanshan's face furrowed and his fingers pointing to the sky also twitched. But after a moment, she still shook her head and pushed left Wu's back with both hands. "No, we must go get this money. It doesn't matter whether it's more or less, on the contrary, it's a matter of attitude." She licked her lips and said, "Believe it or not, the stinky AI in the sky must be rolling on the ground now and looking at us all cold." AI doesn't roll all over the ground, nor does it feel cold all over. On the contrary, it is now overheating and smoking. All the legal provisions introduced in the 500-year history of the Imperial Alliance have been searched for, but there is no rule that can legally take down the two miraculous law enforcers below. Mom. If they hold a grudge and report directly to the Imperial Alliance over themselves, no, absolutely not. It rummaged through its task library, searching for jobs that were extremely difficult and had no one willing to take on. Then, give it to them. It's best if they die next. If you don't take them, you have reason to dismiss them from the law enforcement, they become refugees, and their connection with the Imperial Alliance naturally ends. AI laughed, feeling that if he had a body, his face must be full of cunning now. It immediately prepared to proceed with the implementation, but suddenly found that someone had issued a request to board the floating ship it was on. Feeling restless and calling out for surveillance, the AI froze and saw AI Shanshan standing outside with his hands on his back. What made it cold was the strange smile of conspiracy hidden on Ace-Han Mountain's face. In contrast, AI discovered that the smile it had just given itself was as innocent as a baby's. Swole Bai was bored and squatting on the deck of the floating ship, still holding his hands and feet in his arms. He is not worried about AI Shanshan, who went to negotiate alone. Without him, it was because when AI Shanshan entered the floating ship, he was full of fighting spirit and confidence. After spending this time together, Swole knew that she couldn't hide her worries and her expression on the face would never lie. It felt like he had been waiting for a long time, and when Swole felt that the warmth brought by the body in his arms from the queen's body had almost disappeared, the metal door behind him heard a popping sound of exhaust. He turned around and saw AI Shanshan and AI's big-eyed projection walking out with their backs hooked. One brother here and one sister's there. And unlike last time, the size of the projection was set by AI to be similar to the size of Ace-Han Mountain, indicating that this management-oriented artificial intelligence intentionally or unintentionally lowered its attitude. Standing a few meters away from Swole, one person and one projection, Ace-Han Mountain shook hands and bid farewell to the projection. Zhuo Wu turned around and the elevator leading to the ground was ready. Although AI is friendly, its behavior seems to be driving away the plague god. The elevator is much more comfortable than the thrusters on the mountainside of Acehan. There was nothing to say all the way, until they returned to the ground and the floating airship in the sky left as if fleeing. It was then that AI Shanshan suddenly ended his business smile and stretched lazily again. Wow, I'm amazing. Dealing with AI is easier than dealing with people. Here you go. She popped a coin-like object to left Wu, who took it. This yellow and clear small piece contains pure energy to the extreme, and it is also the currency commonly used in this galaxy. Zhuo Wu frowned and said, energy coins. And it seems like there are more than 3,000. Yes, stinky AI has done something wrong. It raised the price by 0.05%, which is equivalent to our ceiling fee. It's all here. What about your own share? Can you help me save it for now? AI Shanshan blinked, but lifted his hands and face high. Zhuo Wu understood and absorbed the energy coins, then smiled and asked, what other gains do you have from your expression? AI Shanshan smiled and said, I have proposed additional conditions to AI. In the future, it will turn a blind eye to your treatment issues, so you no longer have to worry about being kicked out of our apartment. Also, what you are most concerned about is the whereabouts of the psychic creature that bought the other pair of limbs. I have also asked AI to search for it. Perhaps there will be results within today. Oh. Zhuo Wu's eyes widened, which was indeed quite exciting news. And next, what's important to me is. AI Shanshan took a breath and looked at Zhuo Wu's body with a hint of obsession. I used some tricks to drill through the loopholes in AI logic, so that it wouldn't delve into how we survived this time. This shows that your favor is still a secret. A secret that belongs only to me to explore. She suddenly woke up in panic, wiped the corners of her mouth in panic, lowered her head, twisted her fingers, and a hint of sincerity in her voice. That, Zhuo Wu. You will agree, won't you? Zhuo Wu couldn't help but laugh and cry, of course, you have helped me so much. Although I don't know why you are so curious. AI Shanshan didn't answer, just smiled foolishly and pinned a strand of hair behind his ear. I saw the body in Zhuo Wu's arms again and said, have you figured out how to meet that elf lady? The man shook his head and his joyful face collapsed. Zhuo Wu indeed has no experience in this matter. End of this chapter.